Hello everybody, welcome to JTV. These are quite remarkable times we're living through. I've just sort of been looking back in fascination for the last few weeks as the world has really been transformed because of this coronavirus situation. I know you're probably fed up with hearing that word. We're here outside Prais Dental Care, which is a dental practice in my local area, and it was actually the rabbi of our local community who suggested that I come here to sit down with the chief dentist here and the rabbi of our community. We both share the same rabbi because the chief dentist here, Richard Prais, was actually one of the first people in the UK to contract coronavirus a couple of weeks ago. And so we wanted to go to sit down with him and talk to him about what happened, what it was like, but also, unfortunately, there was a lot of misinformation about what happened, what he went through, things reported in the press. So we wanted to kind of clear that up and also talk about some of the wonderful good things, positive things that he experienced as a result of this, the kindness and warmth that he felt from other people. One of the sad things, of course, is that people have felt that it's dangerous to come here, that it's unsafe. So we're going to do the interview inside his dental practice. His entire family have tested negative for coronavirus. None of his staff have caught it. He's followed the advice in terms of self-isolation. Now he can be out of it. And as usual, the dental practice keeps the highest levels of sanitization and hygiene. So let's go in and see what he has to say. I'm kidding. Okay, Richard, Rabbi Freeman, thank you so much for joining both of us today. This is our first social distancing JTV style interview, which is certainly a first. So Richard, you were one of the first people in the UK to get coronavirus. I think it's what we call a nebuch, right?
Yes, and for as far as I can tell, as far as I'm aware, I was between number 52 and 86. Which makes me a schmock.
A schmock or a nebuch, exactly. Yeah. And so can you talk us through just what happened? How do you think it came about? What's the story?
So there's a little bit of false reporting, which unfortunately came through the press.
So tell us the real story first.
So the real story, I was skiing in Switzerland. I had no idea anything had happened. No, I mean literally, as we're about to leave from the hotel, the Italian concierge, Giuseppe, he's the classic concierge, yeah, Giuseppe, he said, of course you're going through Milan, he said, and there's like mayhem going on in Italy at the moment. And I said, oh my God, he said, yeah, there are these 12 towns. I said, oh, I hadn't heard a thing. I hadn't looked at the paper that morning. And the taxi driver comes and he's wearing a face mask. I'm thinking, well, that's a bit stupid, it doesn't do anything. Right. I thought, why on earth are you wearing a face mask? And then we started hearing about it in the press, reading in the newspaper, and so literally we drove in a taxi for 2.5 hours. I was in Milan Linate Airport for 2 hours, and I was on a plane.
Right. And
somewhere there, I obviously picked up the virus. I have no idea.
Is that for sure? Must have been there.
But I presume
it's an assumption. Right.
It's an assumption because at that time that's the only place.
Right.
And then I was at work for the week, felt perfectly fine. And then on Saturday I had a bit of a headache, thought this is a bit odd. Don't know why I've got a headache. Yeah. Kept on taking my temperature, felt completely fine.
And how many weeks ago was this now?
I was in Italy I flew back from Italy on February the 23rd. Okay. So I was at work from the 24th to the 28th.
Okay. Without knowing anything?
Without knowing anything.
Right.
Felt completely fine. Then Sunday morning, 3 a.m, I woke up, felt unwell, had stomach pain. That's all I had. I had stomach pain, went to the bathroom, and I thought, oh, I feel like I've got flu. Right. I thought, that's odd. Right. I thought, how can I have flu? I'd actually had a vaccination. Right. So it wasn't possible I could have flu. Right. And then I thought to myself, this is really odd. So I kept on going on the NHS 11 website and going through all their algorithm. And the only way I could get, their actual algorithm is confused, or at least it was at the time, and the advice was confused, and we'll go into that later. But at the time, the algorithms kept on saying, have you been to Italy? Have you done this? Well, it wasn't. I could only make myself call NHS 111 if I managed to tick the right boxes. Right. It wasn't like I was straight through to actually needing to ring. Then I rang NHS 111, and I had to convince them that I was unwell. Why? Because they said, we haven't got a cough, we haven't got any difficulty with breathing. the problems I had with the gastric problems, I assumed I had some sort of gastric infection. Because I had,
diarrhea.
Diarrhea,
Right.
let's be straight, yeah? That's all I had. And it's even now not out there as an official symptom. So I convinced them that I had a fever, and they said, okay, we'll put you through to a nurse.
Right.
Because he's a call handler.
Right.
So they put me through to a nurse who asked me all the same questions, so well, I'm not really convinced. I said, I've got a high fever, and I feel like I got flu. And I was in Italy for 3 hours.
Right.
And literally, that's how long I was there.
Right.
That's why I think I'm there to schmuck. And they eventually put me through to the consultant in infectious diseases, who's hilarious fun, at the Whittington.
Right.
I'll mention her, she's very, very good fun. She's called Trupti Patel, she's brilliant.
Okay.
She's great fun to talk to. She just kept saying, it's complete chaos here, Richard. Which must be even worse now.
Wow, yeah.
And she said, okay, we'll get you tested. She said, you don't really fit in with any of our symptoms, but we'll get you tested.
But didn't they want to test you for other things first, like gastric things?
No, she said,
You said you felt it's flu-like, basically.
I said it's flu-like. I said, I don't really feel unwell. I didn't feel unwell. I had a high fever and achy limbs. That's it.
And stomach issues. And
well, that was once.
So that was just once, the stomach issues, right.
Just once. She said that's probably due to the high fever. That happens sometimes.
And how long did the high fever last?
At the most 48 hours.
48 hours?
Tops.
And you feel...
I felt well on Tuesday.
Do you have fatigue issues at all? Or?
Nothing exceptional.
No?
I think I was lucky. I was really lucky. I didn't really suffer.
Well, we can talk about the statistics itself. It sounds like for the majority of people, it will be similar to what you went through, actually. But we can get there in a sec. So what happened? So you got tested.
I got tested, which was quite funny because you drive up. At the time, they hadn't. So we drove in our car, went with my wife because we thought she'd get tested too because she was next to me, and she didn't feel well either. So we go together, tag team. We had to drive to the Whittington Hospital. We had to have a red A, so we wouldn't get a parking fine to park there.
Yeah.
And out comes the poor nurse in her hazmat suit.
Wow.
Which is bizarre. She's like sweating under her visor. And I kept on thinking, this is like
Must have felt surreal. Must have felt surreal.
It felt crazy.
Yeah.
Just felt completely crazy. And she does my swab, which is not that unpleasant. It's fine. Nothing to be scared about. Really nothing. The back of the throat and up the nostrils.
Yeah.
And then I went back to bed.
Okay.
Went back home, went back to bed. And she said, we'll let you know within 72 hours.
Okay.
Well, that was their reporting process at the time. And 9 a.m. Wednesday morning, they rang me and my wife. My wife was negative and I was positive. And we were both a bit perplexed, lying in bed thinking, she's negative, I'm positive. Couldn't really understand how that could be possible.
Opposites attract, Richard.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It just didn't really make full sense. And we were still trying to digest that. And then she said, well, we're actually going to ring back and just test the results, because apparently they double test the results. We'll ring you back, stay in bed. They said there's nothing to report yet. And I think it was about 3 hours later, they rang us back to say, yes, Barry's definitely negative, I'm definitely positive. My thoughts at the time were just confusion. Just total confusion, total mayhem. I felt actually at that point completely better. I wanted to know what the advice would be. And
what was the advice at the time?
The advice at the time was obviously to self-isolate, continue self-isolation.
And presumably you did all that?
We did all that. We were, sort of separate rooms, separate lives, separate bathrooms.
And what did you do to keep yourself busy?
Well...
and the next question really is, when did people start to find out what happened?
What happened?
Because you were really, now we're at a stage where everyone pretty much knows someone that's got it, I think.
Yes.
But you were one of the first, so there was more interest in you. So what happened? While you're self-isolating, what happened?
So you may say, people think, what's there to do? What will I, how will I fulfill my time?
Yeah.
It was absolute mayhem. Just the actual social mayhem was like ridiculous in terms of, so we contacted our boys, say, we've got it, you better go home.
Right.
And they obviously told their friends, and then the mayhem ensued.
Right.
And I mean, it's just in terms of people ringing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the amount of time you had to spend on the phone was almost exhausting.
Right, right, because everyone's asking you, like, they're probably trying to presumably trying to see how you're doing.
Yeah, most people were inquiring out in good faith and in kindness.
Right, right.
And it was, that was very pleasant.
So you had nothing to do but take calls, basically?
Correct.
So your phone blew up, basically?
Yeah,
yeah.
Either taking calls, responding to messages on WhatsApp and text messages.
Right.
And you just, cousins I've not spoken to for ages, like touching base.
Wow, it's amazing how science, challenges and difficulties can actually create opportunities to bring people together that might not otherwise have done so.
Yeah.
But some of it's got a little bit nasty. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Unfortunately, so yeah.
So to talk us through, we're not in the business of naming names and talking about all that kind of stuff. But
sure.
Just what were the sort of the more sort of negative sides of people sort of chatting?
I mean, so what I'm aware, what everyone is aware of is there was a piece in the National Jewish newspaper, well, both newspapers, so it went actually international.
Right.
They kept on, their journalist was ringing the practice incessantly, saying that apparently they've heard the news and they're going to report whatever. It will publish and publish whatever they're going to publish.
Oh really? So they're saying we're publishing for sure.
We're publishing for sure.
And were they saying we're going to publish your name?
That's what I'd understood.
Right, right.
That's
Is that even legal?
I've no idea.
Okay, fine.
I found it very threatening.
Right.
Didn't know how to deal with it. My initial response was to ignore it.
Yeah.
Regrettably, I decided to not issue a statement. I asked my practice manager, maybe I should have rung. Maybe I should have spoken to you first. And use those magic words.
What are the magic words?
Off the record. But we did release, not a statement, my practice manager said, do not mention me, do not mention my name, and they did. Mm-hmm. So she was named. They then used an Instagram photo of my new associate,
right,
which was like, just outrageous. And then I was getting messages from people all over the world.
Wow.
People, Shaw Robinson in New York.
Right, right.
I friends him on Facebook. He sent me a message.
But presumably all that kind of stuff, these messages were still positive.
Those are positive
right.
messages. Those are positive. But it was very negative and very damaging. I understand there were crazy stories out there.
Right. But the damage was really business related. Is that right?
And I think Lashon Hara. Just people saying nasty things.
But saying what? What would they say?
I know there were stories. Unfortunately, the story reported in the paper was false. It said I hadn't come to work. Right. So patients felt that I had released a statement which was untrue.
Right, right, because you had come to work.
I had come to work.
Right.
I wasn't trying to hide anything.
Right.
Which meant I necessitated me ringing up all my patients, which I would have done anyhow to see how they were.
And also, wasn't there? I don't know whether it was reported that you were skiing in Italy, for example, which
Correct.
wasn't true. You were in Milan airport for a couple of hours.
Correct.
Right. So you felt there were false reports going on, and what? So I want to understand before we get to the way it affected your dental practice. What were some of the things people were saying about you that, I mean, how can they really blame you for this? There's no intention to for you to do what you did. So what were you hearing, or what were the what was bothering you?
I've heard stories that we were socialising out and about and going. I heard people say that I was in synagogue. I've heard someone say that I was getting a cup of coffee from the bakery. Right. Like last Friday. Right. I was at home. Right. I heard that we had a dinner party at home.
Wow.
I heard that I'd been to shul. I had been to shul. I had been to shul. Friday night.
You're a very, very bad Jew, Richard.
The Friday night I bugged out, and the Saturday I had a headache. I thought, well, I don't feel well. Right. Why go to shul? It makes sense.
Let's talk about the dental practice now. First of all, has anyone in your practice, any of your staff, have they caught it?
As far as we were, no.
As far as you're aware, no.
As far as we were, 2 were tested
Yeah.
because they felt unwell, but they came back negative.
Right.
And I've spoken to all my patients, and as far as I'm aware, they've all told me they haven't fallen
And
ill.
now everyone in your family is negative, is that correct?
Yes.
Everyone's
Either 2 are negative and 2 have recovered.
2 have recovered. So who else got it in your family?
My son Thomas.
And how did that happen?
I don't know.
Did you see him?
Yeah, he was because he's living at home with us.
Okay, he lives at home with you. Fine.
Yes.
Fine.
Well, he doesn't now, but he was then.
Right. He was then. Okay. But as far so it's been several weeks now, basically, and no one in your dental practice has got it, as far as you're aware.
Yes.
And it's affected your dental practice because people have cancelled appointments. They're postponing appointments.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
So we're currently here in your dental practice.
Mm-hmm.
We've noticed only the strictest hygiene here with everyone. Hand sanitizing as soon as we get in. Everything is sanitized. Being extra careful. Do you think it's sensible for people? Let's say they have emergency dental appointments to have. Do you think there's any good reason for them, as long as let's say they're not, as long as government guidelines allow it, if they're not old or in very very unwell? Is there any good? Do you think there's a reason why they shouldn't come here?
Absolutely not. I mean, if people have an emergency, we're here to help, and we can help.
Right. And what about non-emergency? Do you think there's a reason to postpone?
It's difficult because it's
we're
very
in
fast.
flux right now.
We're
already
in flux.
in flux.
It's
Yeah.
a fast-moving
situation.
situation.
Society's in flux.
It's hard to know what current guidelines are. They change every day. Every day we get new advice.
Right.
As you and I, we just looked at the .gov.uk website.
Yeah.
And guidance keeps changing.
Right.
But if you have an emergency and you're in pain, there's no reason to avoid coming to the dentist.
And have you done? Is there anything you've done in order to be a bit more just careful or cautious in terms of? I mean, obviously everyone's social distancing here as well.
Mm-hmm.
But are there other things you're doing that you might not necessarily have done in this practice just to make things extra safe?
Well, in terms of all universal precautions we take, in terms of sterilisation, cross-infection control, there's nothing we need to really improve upon.
Right.
We work to the highest standards.
Right.
In terms of, the only thing we are doing is we are asking patients, do they have a fever, do they have a cough, before they even come in.
As is everyone in any dental practice, any hospital.
Yeah.
Rabbi, you've been sitting here patiently listening to all of this, but I want to bring you in on this. What's your take on all this? I think there's so many different points to get from what happened to Richard. I just kind of want to let you sort of go into free flow a bit.
I was so pleased to see Richard this morning. There's I think perception out there that this is the zombie apocalypse and this is the end of the world. I mean, we have markets crashing, we have ends of supply chains, we have Pesach products moving off the shelves because there's no end in sight. And then here we are sitting with Richard, who has made an incredible recovery. And as we heard from Richard earlier, I mean, even the downtime was, by the time you heard that he was infected, you already felt better.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is a story of almost everyone I've spoken to. I know about 10 to 15 people that have had it now, and it's all a similar kind of story to you. Doesn't mean that, of course, there's serious cases, of course, but the majority, yeah.
Yeah, no. I spoke to Richard as soon as I heard about it. Originally, when it was known that you had it, and I left you a message, and I thought, I'm not expecting you to return my call, so thank you, because it shows that even when Richard was there, and it was still just lingering, and you were there, like you mentioned, speaking to people on the phone and just reassuring them that you are okay and everything's fine. And so already from way back then, it was apparent that already once the news had broken, you were there to reassure our community, the British public, that this is the flu. And people get the flu, and people recover from the flu. Now, obviously, we know that there are vulnerable populations, and that this is more serious than the average perennial flu. And our hearts go out to those who are suffering at the moment, and those who are isolated. And we have to take all necessary precautions.
We all have to do our bit to try and ensure that we're not just carrying it on to someone, even someone who doesn't necessarily, even someone who also isn't vulnerable, but they could pass it on to someone. So everyone has to do their bit, of course.
Right.
There is a sense of responsibility here, I think. But the point is, what troubles me is the level of panic, I think, and the level of some of the nastiness that we saw happening.
And I think generally people do recover. I mean, you're 35.
I wish 55.
55, and fit and well, and thank God, and people will get it, and people will recover from it, and so I think that's first and foremost what people need to know, that this is not the end. This is something that we have to try and protect ourselves from and protect our loved ones from. But if people do get the virus, then take the time to recover and to isolate. And the vast majority of people will get better. I think the second important point for the community to be aware of, like you've mentioned, I mean, here we are in your dental practice, and there are no known cases of anyone. Here you were taking all the right precautions as a dentist to keep the utmost standards of hygiene and protection for your patients, and just goes to show, here you were with the virus, working here for a few days, and not one case that has come out of Prais Dental Care. In addition to that, I mean, there are stories out there. He was in shul, and like you say, you felt a little unwell. You stayed home. There's nobody who in the community who you came into contact with at Hampstead Garden Suburb Synagogue at shul, and they now have the virus as a result. You did all the right things. The only person that we know of that became ill because you had the virus, unbeknownst to you, was your own son. And there's no way that one can distance oneself from one's own immediate family. Even the social isolation that we're doing now, apart from obviously particularly vulnerable populations, the aged and infirm, I mean, we're all interacting with our immediate family. And so whatever you did, Richard, you did right. And we have so much to be grateful to you for. We, as your patients, as your community members, as your greater family here, we feel very blessed that you did all the right things. And I think the third piece of that is that we need to recognize you did the right things. You've made us aware of what coronavirus is. You brought a greater awareness. People are now taking the right precautions, and they know what to do because you did the right things. And the more that we can now come together as a community and be there for one another and support one another. And when I say support one another, it means shopping for those who are shut in. It means phone calls for those elderly members of our community who need simply people to talk to because they've been advised to stay behind closed doors. It means so many things on so many levels, but I think also we can't in any way minimize the economic impact that coronavirus will have. Here we are at Prais Dental Care, and it's important that your customers, clients, our community, your patients, but the community of Hampstead Garden Suburb know that this is probably one of the safest places to be at this point. It's the general consensus in the medical community. I've spoken to a number of doctors in our community. Is that it's highly, highly, highly unlikely that you could even get the virus again. And so, if somebody does need dental care, you're probably the best person for them to come and see right now.
And that's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm part of the herd immunity.
Exactly.
It's not very large, the herd at the moment.
Yeah. But either way, people shouldn't. Certainly, we have to be mindful of social distancing, but also we need to be mindful of supporting one another in every aspect of
social
one
distancing,
another's
but
lives.
emotional closeness.
Absolutely.
Very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that really sort of irritates me so much is when, you know, even if, let's say, people have to be sensible, if people have to be responsible, and as long as they're doing those two things, to start effectively victim blaming people that get it and then say, oh, well, you spread it here or there, we don't want to go down that road. You know, that's just really not the.
It's a very rocky road.
It's a rocky road, and it's stupid because it's, you know, as long as people, you know, it's what matters here is people, you know, people being responsible and their intentions. If we're being responsible and their intentions are all well and good, then the rest is out of our hands. And to start pointing fingers is just
absolutely.
really bad.
I know, Richard, you alluded to this earlier, and certainly, you know, we don't see the spiritual effects the same way that we see physical ill health effects, but you know, Lashon Hara is also a virus. And
Lashon Hara, just to explain for our viewers, is sort of
is
gossiping, bad
gossip.
talk. Yeah.
You know, it's talking about other people, tale-bearing, starting rumours. This is, you know, true or not true, and that's what's important as well about Lashon Hara. You know, it doesn't need to be not true to be gossip, to be Lashon Hara, evil talk. It just means that we're not engaged in creating positive energy. We, more than ever, right at this moment, I think that what we will find through this crisis, and this crisis won't end tomorrow, this crisis we know will get worse before it gets better over the next coming weeks and months, but it will truly be a test of character for everyone. We'll see who are beacons of light, who is there spreading messages of warmth and positivity and being there to help, and who we know that we can count upon, and who, when you pick up the phone, will make you feel good through these times of crisis, and who are those people who are making things difficult and unpleasant. And you know, I really hope and pray that the good people, the people with the positive energy, will far outweigh. You know.
And by the way, I actually find that one of the ways to actually reduce stress and panic for those people who might be more sort of panicky, more stressy, is actually to become more outward focused onto others. Mm-hmm. That actually calms a person down, because you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking outwards, and so ironically, it has a good impact on oneself. But also, Richard, you know, we've spoken about some of the negative repercussions of this, but have there been any good things that have come from this?
So that's what I did want to talk about, because there have been so many nice things that have happened, because all the messaging and all the conversations, normally I don't spend that much time talking on the phone, but I have actually been like bombarded with the phone calls, which have been great fun. You know, you sort of rediscover socializing, which is quite fun. And on the other hand, we've had so many gifts at home. We've had people almost like secret Santas, people coming, friends who are not even necessarily that, I didn't think we were even that close to. Just bringing a meal round.
Wow. So this is such an important part to hear, because
it's so lovely. I mean, literally, there'll be a knock on the door, and then you open the door and the person's gone, and there's dinner. And one woman brought a meal twice.
Wow.
And then we had, I've had cards from patients.
Wow. And
I've had messages from patients just wishing me well, sorry you got it. And then I got, which I have still worked out who it's from. There was a knock on the door, and the person had gone. There was a bottle of whiskey from the Grapevine, and the message said, "Dear Richard," something to the effect of, "Sorry you got the coronavirus. Wishing you well."
Unlucky mate.
Unlucky mate kind of thing. Unlucky mate. Drink some whiskey. It'll help you feel better. It's not a cure, but enjoy. And it says from your Scottish friend. I'm still trying to work out who he is.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? So so that's really...
And there's a decent bottle.
I think that's a lovely sort of note to end this discussion on.
Yes.
The point is that, you know, everyone, we're all in this together, actually. Humanity is all really... It's a bit unprecedented, actually, where you're having something that literally touches every single person on the planet in some way or another. And we all have a choice, don't we? You know, be responsible, take necessary precautions, but Are we going to panic and freak out and turn inwards, or are we going to be kind, turn outwards, think about others? And the choice is ours, basically. But the main point is, Prais Dental Care, if you have something necessary to get fixed, it's safe to be here. You're negative, your whole family is negative, it's open for business, and we're here right now. And yeah, so thank you so much, Richard.
Thanks
Rabbi
for
Friedman,
coming.
thank you so much for being the instigator for this discussion. So thank you so much for suggesting that we do this. And let's see what happens.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button, and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.